They invited the maid to play chess as a joke. But her very first move shocked everyone in the room, and what happened next changed the life of a billionaire forever. You will not believe how one quiet, overlooked woman turned power, wealth, and pride upside down. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. They invited the maid to play chess as a joke, but her first move left everyone stunned. I was born into noise and hunger, where walls were thin and dreams were thinner. I failed loudly. A burned startup, a stolen idea, a partner who vanished with my savings. Success came later, but shame came with it. By the time I became a billionaire, my boardrooms smelled of Polish and fear. Men laughed easily. I did not. That night, crystal lights hovered above marble floors. Wine glasses rang like small bells. Power felt heavy in my chest. Someone joked. They invited the maid to play chess. She wore a faded uniform. Her hands were rough, scarred by work, steady as stone. Laughter followed her to the table. I did not laugh. She sat quietly, studied the board, listened to the room breathe. Her first move cut the air. Silence fell. I felt it in my ribs. That sharp discomfort of recognition. I had seen that move before. Years ago. When I was desperate. When someone saved me. She looked up. Our eyes met. In that instant, my past returned. She was the woman who once shared her lunch with me when I slept in my office. The woman who told me failure was a teacher, not a verdict. She had cleaned floors by day and studied strategy by night. I had built empires while forgetting humility. The room shifted. Laughter died. I stood, heart pounding, hands trembling, realizing the greatest move of my life was not on the board, but in finally seeing her. I asked the room to leave us. My voice did not shake. Inside, everything did. She moved the next piece. Calm, precise, like someone who had survived worse than pride. Memories pressed in. Cold nights, ramen steam, her voice telling me to breathe. When rejection letters piled like snow, I had forgotten her face, but my soul remembered her patience. She told me she never stopped learning. That knowledge is a candle. Even when the wind is cruel, I confessed my betrayals. The friend who sold me out. The investors who mocked my poverty. The night I almost ended my fight. She listened without judgment. That was her strength. Another move. The board tightened. So did my chest. I realized my fortune was built on discipline. But my wisdom came from her. The men outside the door waited. They always waited. She whispered that power is temporary, but character compounds. I offered her a seat at my table. Not charity. Respect. She smiled softly. Moved the queen. The position was winning. For both of us. The silence felt different now. Not heavy. Honest. I understood that success without gratitude is another form of poverty. I leaned forward, seeing a future that demanded courage again. A future where I must choose Between comfort and truth. Between applause and doing what is right, the room felt smaller, as if the walls were listening. I remembered the day I learned money obeys courage, not the other way around. She told me her life had been quiet battles, dismissed ideas, invisible labor, respect delayed, another move, a sacrifice. She gave up a piece to gain the board. My breath caught. I had done the opposite for years. Protected everything. Risked nothing human. I saw my reflection in the polished squares. A man rich in assets, poor in honesty. She asked why I invited cruelty into my own house by letting laughter define worth. The question stung. It should have. I admitted fear. Fear of losing relevance. Fear of becoming soft. Fear of remembering who I was. She placed her hand near mine. Not touching. Trusting space. She said growth hurts, because pride resists learning. Outside, the city pulsed with my name. Inside, I was finally anonymous. Another move. Check. I laughed, quietly. Not from humor. From relief. I promised her equity. Not as reward, but as acknowledgement. She shook her head gently. Said partnership begins with vision, not numbers. The board was nearly decided. So was my path. I felt the old hunger return. Clean and sharp. The hunger to build something worthy. To lead without crushing. To win without humiliating. The guests grew restless beyond the door. Power dislikes waiting. She studied the board one last time. Every piece had a purpose. Every loss had meaning. She said success is loud, but legacy whispers. I felt smaller and stronger at the same time. She spoke of her mother, hands cracked by soap, mind sharp as glass, a woman who taught her that dignity is never granted, only claimed. Another move, a quiet threat. I saw my early failures again. The eviction notice, the broken laptop, the night rain soaked my only suit. She had been there then, not visible, but essential. I realized my empire was built by standing on unseen shoulders. I stood up, opened the door. The laughter froze. The room sensed change. I told them the game was not over. That respect had just begun. She remained seated, unmoved. That was her power. I returned to the table, sat across from her. No titles, no hierarchy. She looked at me, as if asking a question. Without words, was I ready to unlearn arrogance, to protect talent wherever it lives, to choose integrity when profit tempts silence? Her next move waited. So did my answer. The board held its breath. I nodded before I understood why. Something ancient shifted inside me, like a lock remembering its key. She moved the night. Not aggressive. Inevitable. I saw the pattern now. She had been shaping the game. Since the first laugh. The men watched in confusion. They were used to domination, not revelation. I spoke of rebuilding. of opening doors I once guarded, of measuring success by who rises with me. My voice carried farther than money ever had. She told me leadership is service, disguised as strength. The board was nearly bare. No excess, only essentials. I felt lighter, as if I had set down a crown I never wanted. She reminded me that intelligence survives anywhere. Even in uniforms no one respects. Another move. A trap I gladly walked into. Check again. I smiled fully this time. Not because I was winning, but because I was learning. The room leaned closer. Silence replaced judgment. I thought of the boy I was, hungry and proud, and wished he could see this moment. She said the greatest investment is belief placed early. I extended my hand. She did not rush. Trust, like strategy, requires patience. The final pieces waited. The outcome was clear, yet unfinished. Outside, the world expected certainty. Inside, I chose growth. Her fingers hovered above the board, ready for the move. That would change everything. Again her fingers paused, and time stretched thin. I felt every lesson I ignored press against my ribs. She asked me who I would be when applause faded and accounts closed. The question hurt more than loss. I remembered the night I signed my first real contract. Hands shaking, heart hollow, no one to call. She had been there then too, quietly telling me to read every line, to protect my future self. I had listened once, then I forgot. Another move, deliberate, mercilessly kind. The board opened. So did I. I spoke of guilt, of factories built fast, and people left behind. She said regret is useful only when it becomes responsibility. The word settled heavy. Around us, men shifted, titles suddenly fragile. I realized power fears clarity. She leaned back, allowing me space to step forward alone. I announced changes, scholarships, ownership, pathways for unseen minds, not promises, plans. Her eyes softened. Approval without praise. The game neared its edge. One wrong move could undo everything. I understood now. This was never about chess. It was about seeing before being seen. Her hand returned to the board, the final sequence forming. I swallowed, ready to lose the old me. If it meant earning the next, the room felt warmer. Or maybe I finally was. She asked me to look again at the board I thought I owned. I noticed something new. Every advantage I had came from someone else's sacrifice. Another move. Quiet, unforgivingly honest. I thought of the night my father sold his watch so I could print my first proposal. I never bought him one back. Shame burned clean. She said wealth tests memory. It asks what you choose to forget. The board thinned. No hiding places left. I told them all the truth. That brilliance is often ignored because it arrives without polish. That I had confused authority with worth. No one interrupted. She reminded me that systems change only when courage becomes routine. I felt something rare. Peace earned through discomfort. Another move. Forced. Beautiful. The future arranged itself. Square by square. I saw schools where talent mattered. Companies where respect was policy. A life where love guided strategy. She did not ask for credit. That was the lesson. The board showed a clear ending. But she did not take it. She waited for me to choose whether this transformation was performance or promise. My hand hovered without certainty. With everything at stake, my fingers trembled above the piece. Not from fear of losing, from fear of becoming honest. She watched me, not the board. That trust weighed more than any deal I had signed. I moved, not the safest choice, the truest one. A murmur rippled through the room. Risk always unsettles spectators. She nodded once, almost imperceptible. Enough. I felt the difference immediately. The game changed texture. So did my breath. She said courage feels reckless only to those who profit from silence. I thought of my mother, counting coins at dawn, teaching me numbers before teaching me excuses. I had honored her work, but not her values. Until now. Another move from her. Elegant. Restraining. She limited my power without humiliating me. That was leadership. I realized love is not softness. It is precision guided by care. The men around us shifted again. Some uncomfortable. Some awakened. I spoke of long games. Of building slower. Fairer. With eyes open. She reminded me that transformation is lonely at first. The board was almost resolved. One sequence remained. She leaned forward. Her voice lowered. She said the final lesson is choosing who you become when no one is forcing you. Her hand hovered. Mine followed. 2 lives. 1 board. A future trembling between squares. Waiting to see whether this moment would become a story of change, or just another victory I would someday forget. The silence stretched. Not empty, but full of consequence. I felt every version of myself standing behind me. The boy with borrowed shoes. The man with guarded eyes. The leader deciding what legacy means. She broke the quiet. Not with a move, but with a breath. She said the hardest victory is the one that changes you without asking permission. My chest tightened. This was the moment. Another move from her. Not check. An invitation. I understood then. She was not defeating me. She was offering alignment. I spoke slowly. Promised to dismantle systems that rewarded cruelty. To promote minds, not masks. The room listened differently now. No laughter. Only attention. She finally smiled. Not victory. Recognition. The board showed a narrow path forward. Difficult. Demanding. Right. I felt love in a new form. Not romance alone, but shared responsibility. She said partnership means holding each other to the highest standard. On the hardest days, my hand moved again. Committed. Exposed. The future leaned closer. Uncertain. Yet honest. The final sequence waited. Fragile as trust. Powerful as truth. I knew whatever happened next would define not just a game, but the man I would be. When the room empties, the lights dim, and the real work begins, the final piece slid into place. The board was quiet, perfectly balanced. I looked at her, not as the maid, not as the strategist, but as the force who had reshaped my life. The men outside had waited for spectacle. They left with awe instead, because what they witnessed was not a victory on the board. It was a victory of conscience. I breathed deeply, feeling weight lift from shoulders I had carried alone for decades. She said softly, "Power is meaningless without responsibility. Wealth is hollow without compassion. Success is fleeting without integrity." Her words echoed in the empty room. I realized then that every struggle, every failure, every sleepless night was preparation for this clarity. I offered her a permanent place by my side, not as a token, not as charity, but as an equal, a partner in life, in vision, and in the choices that truly matter. Outside, the city continued its restless rhythm. Inside, we had built something timeless: trust, respect, and purpose. I remembered the boy I had been, hungry, proud, afraid. I remembered the mistakes that could have broken me. And I understood, real wealth is measured not by what you acquire, but by what you give, and by the people you lift along the way. The lessons settled deep. Talent may come hidden, and greatness often wears humility. Those who seem small may carry the wisdom to change the world quietly. I extended my hand to her. She took it without hesitation. Together, we would lead differently. With courage, with kindness, with unwavering honesty. And I knew, finally, that life's richest victories are not on boards, in balance sheets, or in applause. They are in the choices we make when no one is watching, and in the hearts we refuse to break. We turned from the board, ready to build not just empires, but legacies. And this time, nothing would be wasted. The end. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and remind someone you were never alone.